Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. We know that time is a precious resource right now, and we are so grateful that you're spending some of your time with us this afternoon. My name is Sarah Steely. I know many of you. I'm the Senior Program Manager for No Kid Hungry, Virginia, and I am joined today by a wonderful network of partners who I'll introduce in just a second. So the purpose of today's webinar is to share new information and existing resources with school divisions and community groups who hope to expand meal access due to coronavirus-related school closures. We know a couple things right now, three big things in particular. Time is limited, the circumstances are fluid and they are changing. And there are state and community partners who have resources and ideas that they want to share with you, that we want to share with you. So we hope that this webinar maximizes the opportunity to share information in one location while limiting the number of emails in your inbox. And since this webinar is largely intended for existing meal sponsors like our awesome school divisions who have already started meal access in many places, I feel the need to do things a little out of order with this webinar and start by saying thank you rather than ending with it. So there is not a font size large enough available on any computer to type these words as big as I want them to be. I know I speak for everybody on this webinar, but certainly from me personally, my heart is bursting with pride for Virginia's school and child nutrition community. You were given an unprecedented challenge over the last couple of days, and you dropped everything to rise to that challenge. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being rock stars, for being superheroes. And we hope that at least some of the information on this webinar today will be useful to you as you continue to think about ways to reach the need of your community and fine-tune the awesome operations that you already have in place. So with that, here is our agenda. Over the next couple of minutes, you will hear from the Virginia Department of Education, the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. You'll hear from the Virginia Department of Social Services, the Federation of Virginia Food Banks, and of course me with our No Kid Hungry updates. We'll all be sharing updates and resources available at state and local levels that we hope will support you. So a few housekeeping items. You are all muted right now, as far as I can tell, at least. So we ask that if you do have questions throughout the webinar, that you enter them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens. I have an example pulled up here. Q&A is circled. And that will send the questions directly to me so that I can monitor them. And we will try to answer those questions in real time. And if we can't do that, or if it makes sense to just wait, we'll follow up afterwards. But I'm going to be doing my best to keep an eye on those questions. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off by turning the mic over to the wonderful Dr. Sandy Kerwood, the Director, Office of School Nutrition Programs at the Virginia Department of Education. So Sandy, I think you're unmuted. Feel free to take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for coordinating this effort. And I really just want to echo everything that Sarah said. I think, you know, this is a very trying and unusual time for all of us. I know in my lifetime, there's never been anything like this to deal with. But the fact that, you know, each and every one of you has a yellow cape behind you because you are truly heroes. I have seen nothing in the last week because I know most school nutrition folks worked tirelessly over the weekend so that Monday morning, even though schools were closed, children had access to good, healthy food. And so I cannot thank all of you in the schools and all the other partners that are working so diligently to take care of our communities. It really is wonderful to be part of that, and please know that the Department of Education is here. Like you all, things are changing very rapidly for us, and while I'm trying to get the meal waivers approved as quickly as possible, we are getting, many inquiries, and there are a lot of communications that have to be developed and provided, and so it does slow the process down a little bit. So keep the faith. Our team has been relegated to teleworking for the most part. I'm here in the office, and we're trying to keep a few people here to be readily accessible, but please know that our team is 100% available to you all. So I wanted to provide with you with a few updates that particularly those items that were just provided to us yesterday from USDA. And I think what I want to reiterate to everybody, and I believe that I speak for all organizations and all government agencies when I say this, we are all trying to do our very best to make sure that you have what you need. And we know that there are state and federal guidelines that requirements that we are doing our best to follow. And I appreciate everyone's efforts to do that. We do have to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. We do want to make sure we follow all the regulations with the integrity that we live our daily lives. But we also need to remember that we have to use our heads a little bit and be thoughtful about our work and really consider, what we're being faced with and what we're able to do. So please know that that is in everyone's best interest to make sure that we really put our children at the forefront of this whole situation. So what we do know from USDA, and they have been very gracious in keeping us up to date as quickly as possible also, that when you're distributing multiple meals, I ask that first of all, when you submit your waiver, the more clarity that you can provide in your waiver, the easier it is for us to interpret that consistent with the USDA guidelines. So we will be revising that waiver form so that we can provide you better examples and more information to make it a little easier for you to complete the waivers. But please know that that waiver is required from each sponsor in order to operate non-congregate meals under the summer food or seamless summer options. We do have clarity that sponsors can send up to 5 days worth of meals home. You need to include that in your plan as to how you plan to do that. And know that there is a maximum of 2 meals per student per day. This is the guidance from the Summer Food Service Program. So you can provide breakfast and lunch, breakfast and snack, lunch and snack, breakfast and supper, any combination except lunch and supper. That is Summer Food Service guidelines, and those guidelines have not changed. We know that folks have been asking about donating perishable foods. Please know that you cannot donate perishable foods or any USDA foods directly to an individual through the Summer Food Service Program. These foods can be donated to food banks or food pantries. I think Seth will give you some different guidance regarding the USDA foods, but please make sure you follow these guidelines, and if you'd like a copy of the USDA guidance on that, I'm happy to provide that as well. What has also become an opportunity is home meal delivery. Only sponsors of school sites are eligible to provide home delivered meals. This requires an consent from the actual parent or guardian. So this would be the one area where names need to be kept, because consent needs to be provided from the parent in order for you to go to their home and provide a meal for their children. One distinction with home delivered meals is the child does not need to be present for the meal to be delivered to the home. There is no additional reimbursement to cover these costs. However, these costs can be absorbed into the non-profit food service account. And so sponsors may deliver from area eligible sites to the children's homes in that site. So for example, if you have a school that is over 50% free and reduced and you want to provide meals directly to the home for those children, they are eligible to do that. If you have additional questions about sites that are under 50% free and reduced, please reach out to the agency directly. We can help you with some additional guidance for those sites. Another question that's come up frequently that we did receive some additional clarification from USDA yesterday is for schools that are operating online learning or virtual learning, this does not count towards a school being open. Therefore, schools can still operate summer food as an unanticipated closure. The ability for them to receive or access learning in these scenarios does not affect your ability to serve meals. Additionally, meal service during scheduled breaks such as spring break, you can continue your meal service through what would have been your spring break because these are considered unanticipated closures. Even if you were thinking that your school would have been closed because of spring break, the guidance from USDA is that these sites now are considered eligible for meal service. So if you have additional questions and you want to send those in, we're happy to help provide guidance, and we're trying to be as clear as possible and as consistent as possible, but please know there are some unique circumstances where some guidance may be a little different. But also please know that the flexibilities that we have offered to you are currently the only flexibilities that USDA has provided to the Department of Education. The Department of Education is not able to provide flexibilities that USDA has not granted to us as flexibilities. So I know that's one area that's been a concern. We've had quite a few questions on things, can we waive the requirement to have a student be present? No, we cannot. But what we can encourage you to do is consider how you're serving your community and being as consistent with following the guidelines as you can. We also know that we do not want to turn families away, so please, use good judgment when you're providing meals. And I think that's all I have for VDOE updates.
Thank you, Sandy. I have a question from Jenny Jeffries. If you're willing to take it right now, if not, we can send around and answer afterwards. Okay, so it's since we can now serve during spring break, do we need to modify our SFSP application to include the spring break dates?
Yes.
There we go. So the answer
because you will not be able to claim meals unless you have those dates included. So please do update your application.
Great, thank you. And another question about bus stop sites that I think you maybe have answered in another document. So the question is, how are sites able to serve meals from a bus stop? Do the bus stops have to be qualified?
No, so I'll just give a little bit of a brief answer to that. So remember, it is the school site. This is a little different than how we operate summer food. So in summer food, when you have to have a congregate feeding site and that bus stop or that mobile food stop would have to be qualified and the kids would have to eat there, that is not the case under the non-congregate guidelines. So you can deliver from a school that's qualified or even a school that's not, if it's under 50% and it's approved site. You can deliver meals from that site to your normal bus route or to any bus route that you determine and feed the children at that site, and they can come get their meals and take them home. They do not need to eat them there. They do not need to be students from that school or have any other qualification. The site qualifies. You do not have to list the bus stops as sites, but we do want to know what time frame and what routes you are using while you're providing those meals to bus stops. Does that answer the question, hopefully?
I think that was a pretty great summary, and we can follow up afterwards with any additional.
Yes, and please know we did send out additional FAQs and best practices in a director's memo this morning.
Beautiful. All right, thank you, Sandy. Not seeing any other questions at this exact moment, we'll go ahead and move on to Seth, if that's all right with you. Alrighty. So Sandy, I'm going to go ahead and put you back on mute for the time being. Before I introduce Seth Benton, I wanted to just mention to everyone that I've been getting some texts and emails over the last couple of minutes that this webinar had reached the participants in the webinar have reached the capacity for our system. So folks are being told that they can't join right now. If you're getting, texts or emails from any of your colleagues in the field, please reassure them that this is being recorded, and we'll send around that recording and the slides and any other notes that we need to, whether it's an FAQs document, etc., after the fact, so that everybody will have that information. And as well, I will respond to everybody who sent me an email about the webinar being at capacity. I'm so thrilled that there are so many people who are hungry for this information. So thank you, Sandy. Now I'd like to turn it over to Seth Benton with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, who's going to offer a few remarks from his perspective. Seth?
Hi, how is everyone? I do want to start off just by thanking and giving a compliment to the Virginia Department of Education and to the school nutrition divisions. I have a son in the Williamsburg-James City County school system, and we received an email very quickly as this issue started. Very clearly outlined the program. That was followed by an email which offered transportation to and from the schools through the Williamsburg Area Transit. So I just wanted to say thank you and was extremely impressed with how quickly and completely this was organized. So thank you. And then I just have a few things to share with what we're doing in food distribution. Mainly what we of course we work closely with Sandy in the Department of Education, but a few other things that we do are household distribution programs. They're USDA food distributions. We have two main programs. The first is the Emergency Food Assistance Program, we refer to as TFAP. That's for low-income households. The second program is the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which is for seniors. And what we've been doing is working with USDA to get waivers to try to make the food distributions a little bit easier and also a little bit safer. So we just a couple of small things we did initially. We did receive a waiver for our CSFP, or our senior program, to allow participants to receive 2 boxes per month rather than the usual 1 box. And what that does, hopefully, is limit the amount of times that they have to come out. So they'll get the same amount of food over the course of 2 months, but only have to come out once as opposed to twice. The second thing we did at our distribution for both CSFP and TFAP was to get a waiver so that we would not require signatures. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be completed with these, but what we did was we got a waiver for signatures so we would minimize the amount of exposure that people had with each other, kind of going with a no-touch distribution. And then the final thing we have, and probably much bigger, we had a conference this morning with USDA to talk about disaster household distributions, which we hope to submit at least by tomorrow. And what that will allow for is anybody in need due to the virus will be able to automatically qualify. They won't have to fill out paperwork. There won't be specific financial requirements. So it's just going to make the ability to distribute food to anybody in need possible, as opposed to the many requirements that we have now. So most of those will be waived. So hopefully that will go in tomorrow. We hope to hear fairly quickly back from USDA. And then, of course, we will work with the Virginia Federation of Food Banks, like we do with all of our household programs, to try to get those distributions started. And that's mostly what I have.
Thank you, Seth. I'm going to pull Sandy off mute just really quick to see if she has any other questions for you or any other remarks she wanted to make. Sandy, anything else you wanted to add here?
No, but I think, Seth, could you mention about the opportunity for the use of USDA foods beyond part of the school meal programs? What opportunities do the sponsors have in utilizing those in a different way? And before you answer that, I just want to say thanks to Seth because you know, his team is very collaborative, and we appreciate the ability to work with them. We think that joint communication is helpful. Hopefully, it minimizes the amount of times people have to reach out, and we're being unified in our messaging. And thanks for the partnership.
Absolutely. Sure. Thanks, Sandy. And what schools can do is take any of their USDA products and actually use those in an emergency situation, which we are obviously in now. So whatever you have on hand at the schools or whatever you have at the distribution facilities where we also store foods, any of that can be used for the summer food service program or seamless summer option, whichever one you're using. You can use any of your existing USDA foods for that. And foods will continue to come into the distributors, continue to come into the schools. So we hope to have a pretty full supply moving forward. So we do have the option for that as well. And also with any of the household programs that we have, those can be paired with the existing programs at schools. So we know kids can get 2 meals a day, 5 days a week, but then families can also begin to access the TFAP program. And then once we get permission from USDA to expand this to everyone in need or anyone in need, then what we'd be able to do is, you know, people would be able to have access to those 2 meals a day for 5 days, and then families could access the TFAP program and have enough potentially for their whole family. So if a family is able to combine all these, they'll come pretty close to meeting their nutritional needs, I think.
Thank you, Seth, and we appreciate you sharing those remarks. You're welcome to go ahead and put yourself back on mute, and Sandy, I'll put you on mute as well. So grateful that you were able to be here with us today, Seth. So I'm going to turn it over next to Andrea Gregg, the Deputy Director of Strategic Initiatives with the Virginia Department of Social Services. Andrea, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Sarah?
Absolutely.
Great. So I just have to say, again, reiterate what the other panelists have said and express my appreciation. I do not have school, and like Seth, I do not have school-age children here in the Commonwealth, but I had a number of friends and family screenshotting pictures and texting them to me and emailing them to me of what school divisions were doing all across the Commonwealth. I heard from friends and family in Southwest, Northern Virginia, Tidewater, and it was amazing. I mean, over the weekend, when a lot of folks were still wrapping their heads around everything, I was getting texts from people that said, look at what this school division's doing, look at what this one's doing. It was amazing. So thank you very much, and just really amazing at what you all have been able to accomplish. So from the Department of Social Services side, I will tell you that we also are looking, and are actually right this very moment at 3 o'clock, we had our folks in the Division of Benefit Programs SNAP team are on a call with USDA right now discussing some potential waivers that we are going to be submitting to USDA, much like the other programs. Those waivers will be, there are several that we're looking at potentially submitting that are not related to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, but there are a number of things, additional waivers that the Response Act will allow us to submit. And those would be moving away from, just for a second, not just nutritional supports for families with children, but one of the waivers included in that act includes us to suspend the time limits for what we call able-bodied adults with children, without children. So that would allow us to serve households that maybe don't have children for a longer period of time. That's one of the things that the Response Act allows. The other thing it would allow is us to provide supplemental benefits. So we could provide additional SNAP benefits to households. I think one state has already, I think New Jersey has already allowed for a 2-week additional allotment based on some CDC guidance that families should have at least 2 weeks worth of food in their homes. So we're looking again at waivers that are related to the Response Act, as well as waivers that USDA has allowed separate from that act. And I will keep, that information will be available on our website, and we'll put that out to local departments of services and our participants as soon as we know which of those waivers have been approved and which ones we're moving forward with. One of the ones that I know I wanted to speak to a little bit is one of the provisions in the Families First Act does allow, we were very excited when we saw this, of course, is for families who have an eligible child, and that's defined as a child who is eligible for free and reduced meals. Once school has been closed for 5 consecutive days, we can provide via our EBT system, it says made via EBT system, an additional SNAP benefit. And that benefit, or a SNAP benefit additional if you're receiving SNAP, that benefit would be allowed for households who are currently receiving SNAP and households who might not already be receiving SNAP. So that was really exciting. And we will be working closely with, of course, Sandy and the Department of Education and all of you all to see what's the best way to do that, how we can do that most expeditiously and efficiently. So that was really exciting when we saw that, and we've already started conversations on how we might do that and provide those additional supports to families via an electronic benefit transfer card or some mechanism like that. The other thing that we're doing is we have going to be linking to our public website information on all the work that you all are doing, as well as 211, which is very, very grateful for all the detailed information that the Department of Ed was able to provide on all the many things that you all are doing. They're getting a lot of calls on that, and that's tremendous, been a tremendous help for them to be able to really direct that caller specifically and let them know what's happening in their community. So we're excited about being able to post that information both to 211 and our public website. We do have a portal on our public website that is specific to COVID-19. I think that's probably it. That's what I have right now for Department of Social Services, specifically to nutrition effort. Questions?
Thank you, Andrea. I'm going to go ahead and open up Sandy's line in the same way that I did with Seth to see if she has anything else to add. Sandy?
No, ma'am. Super happy to be partners with all y'all.
Thanks, Sandy. I'm not seeing any immediate questions on my end, Andrea. Oh, let me open up a chat real quick right here. So, Sandy, while we have you unmuted right now, actually, I think we'll hold on that one and maybe follow up after the fact. I'm taking executive license on these questions, but we'll be sure to get answers to all of those who have offered them to us. So, Andrea, thank you again for your remarks. I so appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Eddie Oliver right now, Executive Director of the Federation of Virginia Food Banks, to hear what his food banks have to offer to our meal sites and to our meal sponsors at this time. So Eddie, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would be remiss if I did not continue showering praise on all of you for stepping up the way you have. In particular, the school sponsors. I've worked with many of you in the past during my No Kid Hungry days, and I just want you to know that these extraordinary efforts you're undertaking to continue feeding kids are allowing the food banks to continue the work they're doing to ensure that our agencies, the food pantries, soup kitchen, shelters that we serve throughout the state continue to be well served. There's a lot of work we're undertaking now to tap into the food supply, working with our, the grocery stores have much less product to donate right now, as you can imagine. And so we're looking for new sources of food. We're developing new distribution models that are low-touch distributions to limit the contact between clients, volunteers, and staff, including even drive-through distribution models. So we're trying to both sustain our operations to continue meeting the need that we know is out there, while developing some new programs, some new delivery service delivery models that we know are needed during this crisis. So just know the work you're doing is allowing us to continue doing this other work because you're picking up so much slack when it comes to families with children. I also wanted all of you to know that we are specifically looking at the senior population. We're talking to the area agencies on aging who are largely responsible for feeding low-income senior populations. They're having to develop some new delivery models because they also have a congregate feeding program for seniors they can't operate anymore. And so that's another population we're better able to serve in large part because you all are serving children so well. Now, it's not to say that we are ignoring children altogether. Our food banks are continuing, the school pantries, the school markets. Many of you work with them in those scenarios. I know that we're trying to sustain backpack operations or some version of them, if at all possible. And meanwhile, I know the food banks are also stepping up where they have after-school programs that have closed, applying to also offer summer feeding at those community sites during school closures. So a lot going on. We're staying very busy. I did want everyone to be aware of these resources that we have online. If you want to advance to the next slide. So we're currently working on getting a new page up on our website, so we'll just be able to direct folks to one location. But I gave you the rundown here of each food bank's agency locator, which you can share as a resource with your families. I have a link at the bottom to a website where you can just put in your zip code and figure out which food bank serves your community if you don't already know. There's also a map on our website at vafoodbanks.org. But in general, the central region, northern Richmond, northern neck down to south side is going to be Feedmore. Blue Ridge is Lynchburg, north to Frederick County and Loudoun County, in the northwest part of the state. Fredericksburg, very tightly focused, Fredericksburg and the surrounding counties. Capital areas, Fairfax, Prince William, Alexandria, Arlington. Southwest Virginia is Roanoke, down to Danville, and then all the way to Lee County. Southeastern Virginia is the southeast corner of the state and the Eastern Shore. And then Peninsula is James City County, Williamsburg, down to Hampton and Newport News. So please, in whatever way possible, on your school division's website, if you have communications you're sending out to your families about food assistance, include these links, and the food banks are doing the best they can to keep those updated as agencies are closing. But that's the most accurate listing for those localities of pantries and soup kitchens that would be available to them. And so I think that's it for me. Happy to take any questions folks might have.
Thanks, Eddie. I'm not seeing any immediate questions for you right now, though, folks. If you do have questions for Eddie, keep sending them in. We'll take a little bit of time at the end to take a look at the question list. Someone did ask, if these slides will be circulated with any notes. Absolutely, we'll send these to you so that you have access to these links that Eddie was kind enough to put in this slide for us. So, seeing no immediate questions for Eddie, I'm going to go ahead and take the next couple of minutes to give you some updates on No Kid Hungry, No Kid Hungry's response to the current situation. So starting with our emergency relief grants. So as coronavirus is closing schools and workplaces nationwide, No Kid Hungry headquarters is aware that vulnerable children are losing the school meals that they depend on. So as a result, kind of put our heads together to take a look at what funds we could free up for an emergency relief grant pool to support local school districts, nonprofit organizations, and government agencies in your efforts to ensure that kids get the nutritious food that they need. So unlike our usual grant rounds, those of you who are existing summer meals sponsors are familiar that we've had grant rounds over the last couple of years, and that equipment is usually meant, that funding is usually meant to put towards things like equipment and staffing and other resources like that. This grant is much more flexible, and honestly, we don't even fully, I think, know at this point what it is that you need to make your efforts the best that they can be given these unfamiliar and uncertain circumstances. So you can follow the link on the screen to submit your interest in receiving funds. This isn't the grant application itself. It takes you to kind of just the request page, at which point we'll follow up for more information. And if you are an existing school division or community sponsor, the No Kid Hungry staff are ready, right after this webinar or first thing tomorrow morning, we'll be sending you out the information about applying for these emergency relief grants. So we'll be in touch with that information. Look for an email in your inbox, but know that we're kind of doing everything we can to redirect resources, at the national level, at the Virginia level, to free up funds to support you in your efforts. So outreach and media support is a pretty frequent offer from No Kid Hungry. I feel like I am always peddling this on you whenever we talk, and nothing has changed even in the midst of these school closures. So please let us know what we can do to help spread the word about your meal sites, whether that is connecting with reporters with the support of the PR firm that we use here in Richmond. They're wonderful. Whether that's creating visuals that you can print and mail or post on your social media pages. We love tooling around with graphic design. Or if we can write an op-ed or a letter to the editor about your amazing meal operation to make folks aware of it. We are so happy to lend support in the outreach and media realm, as you're starting your meal sites and thinking that, man, I wish more kids and families were coming. Maybe it's an awareness issue. Let's put our heads together and think about ways that we can boost that awareness. And then lastly, and this is very much in the works, happening live as so many things are right now, that 877 texting line that you're familiar with, that we use in the summer months to direct kids and families to meal sites nearest them. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, in the summer months, kids and families can text food or comida to 877 to get a list of meal sites, operating times, and addresses in their area. We're looking to open up that texting line for use during these emergency school closures. And that's something that's happening at the No Kid Hungry national level. So I have very little control over it, except to, say that Virginia is interested, to be able to get them the data that they need to populate the system. So I wanted to put it on your radar that that's a service that we're looking into and that we're excited to potentially activate to add another layer of opportunity for families and kids to access the information that they need. So those were my three big updates from No Kid Hungry. I'm gonna go ahead and pause now and unmute all of the panelists just to see if there are any questions or any other remarks that folks want to make that they didn't say in their initial remarks.
Sarah, this is Andrea. I just wanted to clarify one of the questions that came up in the box regarding supplemental SNAP benefits. So just to make sure folks are aware, those are not available in Virginia right now. As I said, we're going through the process of evaluating what waivers are currently available through USDA, and that's what we're doing right now. And then when I spoke to the potential for providing a benefit to families who have eligible children once schools have been closed for 5 days, that is a provision that is part of the Families First Response Act, which is actually, unless it happened very recently, has not passed the Senate. So that act has to, of course, pass the Senate, and then we have to work through those processes. So So I'm sorry if it was confusing to anyone. Because the question was, are local departments aware of this? And they're probably not aware of, they're probably aware of the fact that we are looking into waivers and different options, but none of those have been approved. And of course, the Response Act has not gone through Congress yet. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Andrea. And I think, that's your answer there was really helpful. And to another question we got, we will transcribe these answers, timestamp them, since things are changing so often, just so in the cases where there wasn't text available on the slides or folks were giving verbal answers, we'll write those down so you make sure that you understand the full details of the response. So Sandy, this might be a question for you or anyone else on the line. Is there anything dietetic interns can do to help remotely?
Remotely? I do not know. I'd have to give that some thought. But if they want to reach out to us at the Department of Education as volunteer opportunities come up, we can certainly, farm them out, especially their expertise maybe around meeting special dietary needs with limited resources, such as some of the school divisions don't have, a full complement of menu choices. That might be one way. I did want to add, my team would like me to remind sponsors that if you could not revise your application for spring break this week, unless your spring break is next week. So we're trying to triage and get responses to folks timely. But what is helpful is as much information as you have, if you can kind of triage yourselves also. So if you don't have spring break next week, hold off on submitting your application in SNPWeb for the subsequent weeks of spring break. That'll help us get applications that are in now finalized and those applications for next week done. Because what we want to make sure is that the applications are complete and approved in order for us to be able to process the reimbursements, which will be coming up quickly because the end of the month will be here before we know it. So, whatever you can do to help us with clarity and, thoughtfulness, that is super helpful. And I just want to reiterate, we as these are unprecedented times, it's also really heartening. I think this has really put school nutrition and food insecurity on the map nationally at a minimum, about how important the good work that everyone does and how important making sure that our children and all of our people are fed and fed well. So let's not miss this opportunity to really recognize the good work that you all are doing and to make sure everyone understands what effort has gone into this to make sure that this happens and continues. We don't want to lose this momentum as we roll into our regular summer and then back into school next year.
Thanks, Sandy. Another question for you while you're here. University and restaurant closures have led to dramatic loss in sales for local farms. Are any of these emergency feeding programs in the market for local local products, pardon me?
I would certainly hope so. I'm guessing that procurement currently is people are kind of using what they have now. But I can certainly reach out to Trista and ask her how, and I'm probably this is an opportunity for VDACs also, on how they can partner farms with local school districts to get local agricultural products into the schools. Another great opportunity.
Absolutely. I think to your point, we were talking a little bit earlier, Sandy, about just trying to get these programs started over the last couple of days and working around the clock over the weekend to get the meal sites in place and approve the necessary paperwork and applications, but then now doing what we can to fine tune them and make them the best they can possibly be. I think that opportunity to partner with local farms is definitely in that category.
And this is Seth. Maybe I'll just throw out there also that when preparing those 2 meals a day, schools that have money in the Department of Defense Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program can continue to use those. So that's one option. I mean, obviously it's going to be limited. It has to be things that pack easy, but Produce Source, who has our bid on that, has reached out to schools, I believe, and is offering sliced apples, carrots, that sort of thing, which are easy when doing a grab and go.
You know, that might be a great opportunity also for some of the packers to work with the local farms to pack some of these items so that they can be easily unitized to be used in the school meal programs. Because as food becomes potentially more scarce, and maybe it won't, but whatever we have local that we can keep local, it might actually be a business opportunity for packers and farmers to put those two together and get those products into the schools where the federal reimbursement is available.
Thank you both. Another question, I think one that I can answer. Can you address communities without good internet in regards to the texting service and how to reach them, any PSAs or other media efforts ongoing? So just want to clarify that the texting number is not up and running. It's a service, that we consider supplemental and are working to do what we can to bring it to fruition. But right now, the best effort and the best place to go for this information is your school division website. No Kid Hungry over the last couple of days has been monitoring all 132 public school division web pages, and there is information on almost every single one about the meal service opportunities in those communities. And more than that, I've seen literally dozens of local media stories about these emergency meal sites. So there is an amazing grassroots effort happening right now to raise awareness about meal availability, about nutrition access at the local level. And I would recommend anybody who's asking or anybody who's looking for information to start there, to start with their school division webpage, to start with the central office. And if you're still not finding what you need or you feel like you need more, please, like I said in my slides, reach out to No Kid Hungry. We want to do what we can to maximize the reach of these programs. All right, so I'm just taking a quick look here. I'm not seeing anything else that we haven't touched on in some way. So I'm going to go ahead and flip to the last slide, which is our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us now. Again, we'll be circulating these slides, so you'll have this information and you can circulate it later. Again, we'll be in touch with the recording of this webinar. So please tell your colleagues who might have gotten in touch with you about their inability to get into the webinar that we will be circulating this information. And thank you for your grace and your resilience during this important time, and your grace for dealing with us as we put together a webinar when we're all in different parts of the state. So I have never been prouder of Virginia's child nutrition community, and it is such an honor to work with you as we do what we can to make sure as many kids as possible are fed during this time. So with that, we'll close, but look out for the recording and we'll get in touch with you with more information. Thank you.